I begin. I see no reason for waiting. No need to hope for my ship to come in. I set my intention and start right now. Now is the season, now I begin. I see no reason for waiting.
Please join me in prayer. As we move into this time of inspiration this morning, we do so knowing that we are blessed by the presence of the divine. We know that there is one power, one truth, one love, one light. That's God, that's Spirit. And that it exists in all things, always present, everywhere present, surrounding us and filling us. And then what we know is that this power, this presence is the source from which we came, and we are a part of it. We are connected to it. We are united with it. And knowing this, we can find comfort in that very idea that we are here and God is here and we are present together. How blessed this is, how perfect this is. And so what we do right here and right now is we open our minds and we open our hearts and we turn our attention to this message, allowing those gems of inspiration to speak to us, to touch us, to move us and to lift us. And we let go of anything outside of this moment. Nothing else needs to be cared for right now. Nothing else needs our attention right now. We are just here, present in this moment, blessed by God, in God, and as God. I know it's perfect and good. And I simply let this go. I let it be. And so it is. I have discovered in my life that anytime I try to change, or I make the effort, set the intention to change, I run into, what would I call these? Obstacles. I run into obstacles of the things that I don't really want to change, or I don't really want to let go of. I remember many, many years ago making a decision to change almost everything I could about my life. I wasn't happy where I was. I wasn't happy with how I was behaving. I wasn't happy with my job. And I wanted to just throw it all out there, throw caution to the wind and change everything. And what happens when we do that is those little ideas and those little concepts and those little pieces of our lives that were there before start to kind of show up again. They kind of creep into our existence and our experience. And sometimes we fall back into the old patterns. And then we think we have failed somehow. And the truth is we haven't failed. It's all a process. It's all step by step by step. The truth is, when we make the decision to change, when we decide to open up to possibilities, and when we begin to vision and listen to the ideas of what we can be, it's a little uncomfortable. As we move into something unfamiliar. And for many people, change is tough because we want to hold on to those familiarities. We want to hold on to those comforts of the past. I used to train in corporate America. I've talked to you about this a lot. And I did classes in customer service, but I also did classes in human development and expansion and leadership. And what I loved about those classes was I constantly chose to keep everyone a little bit on edge. And how we would do this is they would come into the classroom the first day and they would all sit down and they'd kind of settle in. And the next day when they came in, the furniture was all rearranged. Or sometimes they would come into the class and their name tags would be placed in the room and they'd have to go sit where their name tag was, and the next day their name tag was someplace else. This really messes with a lot of people because what we do how we are in the very psyche of who we are is we have this innate ability to create a comfort zone in less than 10 minutes. And for some, it probably doesn't even take that long. You come into a room, you're feeling a little uncomfortable. I would watch the faces of the new people as they would come in and look around, and some of them were a little nervous, and some of them were really excited. And you find this place, and you put all your stuff down, and you put your things on the floor, and you sit in a chair, and now that's your space. And you adapt to that, and you don't want anybody to mess with that. And so what would happen on day 2 when they would come in and everything was rearranged is I would get some complaints. I would have some people that were a little distressed. And they'd have all these stories about why they had to sit exactly where they sat the day before. And this just doesn't happen in corporate America. You can see this in a church building, in a spiritual setting, in a sanctuary. There are people who come in to a Sunday service when we have those Sunday services and when we get to go back to that, who sit in the same place all the time. I have had people come up to individuals, visitors in the congregation, and ask them to move because they're sitting in someone else's seat. When you think about that, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of silly. But what I'm looking at here is that idea of a comfort zone. And once we establish a comfort zone, it takes a whole lot to get us to move out of it, because moving away from it feels a little risky. Feels a little bit risky. Here's what Neale Donald Walsch says about this. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. I love that quote. When we get comfortable, when we get into this niche and we keep doing the same thing, the same habitual behaviors over and over again, and we don't leave that spot on the sofa, and we don't want to go outside the front door, or whatever that is, we stop growing. We stop evolving, we stop developing, and we actually begin to shrink a little bit. And so what Neale Donald Walsch is telling us here is that we have to get to the end of the comfort zone. That's where our life begins. We have to step outside of that. Our theme for this entire month has been open to the possibilities. And we have looked at the many, many ideas that are out there for us. And I'm sure that those of you who have listened to these talks and have gone on to do some of the work throughout the week are seeing even more and more ways to expand and to evolve. And as we look at this idea, we want to come to today's talk title. And today's talk title is Commit to Transformation. Are you willing to commit to you? Are you willing to commit to your life? Are you willing to commit to the transformation that is percolating, is nagging at you, is talking to you, that idea that's coming forth for you? Are you willing to make that commitment? Because that's what it's going to take. That's the place where we are right here and right now. And so in looking at that, the idea is real simple. Is it worth it? Are you worth it? Are you worth it? Are you worth the time, the intention, the challenges, the discomfort that's going to come to get you where you choose to be? I promise you this, it will be worth it, and I promise you it will not be comfortable. But we must make that commitment. Years ago, and this is no longer a practice as I understand it, and I'm grateful for that, but years ago, baby elephants were trained by tethering the leg of the elephant to a stake in the ground. Now, I know this was done a lot in the arena of circuses, but I also know it was a huge practice in India and other places. And the baby elephant would learn that it could only move so far away from the stake, and that it was ensnared. And the rope on the baby elephant's leg wasn't particularly heavy or really durable, but it held the baby elephant. And as the elephant began to grow, it stopped trying to move away from the stake because it believed that it could not. So even later in life, when the elephant was larger, the rope that was used to tether the elephant wasn't a very strong rope. It didn't have to be, because the elephant didn't have the habit of testing it. My friends, we're those elephants. In childhood, in our youth, in our teens, in our early 20s, we were trained to believe certain things about ourselves. And we are not willing to stretch away from that stake of solidarity, of that component that has held us in place. We're not willing to take a risk because we don't believe we can. And I'm here to tell you, we absolutely can. You absolutely can, because there is nothing holding you. Nothing holding you. In order for the highest idea of your life to unfold, you must be willing to transform your consciousness and be willing to have your life around you transform. That means that the people in your life will possibly change. That means that the daily behaviors for you will possibly change. It may even mean that where you live may become a new environment, a new shift, a new change. But once you make that commitment, once we make that decision to step forward, then it all can work and it can all come forth beautifully. When we look at source, we can look at this analogy. There's a garden hose, and the garden hose is attached to a faucet outside. And that faucet is source. And when you turn the spigot on the faucet, the water flows into the hose. And if there are no obstructions or obstacles in the way, then that water flows freely from one end, where the faucet is, to the other end, where the end of the hose is. But if there's a kink in the hose, or you're standing on the hose, then there is an obstacle and the flow is restricted. It is halted. It is stopped. Our spiritual work that we get to do every day of our lives is to move those restrictions, to get off of the hose, to unkink it, to make sure that nothing is obstructing the flow, so that when we tap into source, when we step into that moment that we are recognizing we are one with the divine and we are asking for support to come forth for us, it flows freely to us and through us. And nothing can get in the way. So stop standing on the hose of your life. Stop restricting that flow of infinite good that is attempting to come to you. We are reminded over and over again in this philosophy that we were put here, we have been brought here to experience good. To experience good. And we just need to move away from any obstacle and move any obstacle away from us to allow us to do that. Wayne Dyer says this: "There is no scarcity of opportunity to make a living at what you love. There is only scarcity to resolve to make it happen." So again, the possibilities are limitless. The only thing that's stopping you from doing, being, becoming, having whatever it is you choose is whatever restrictions you have placed upon yourself. And if you haven't made the decision to fully commit, that will cause you challenges. A few months ago, I decided to do some work with a life coach. And I knew that there would be a substantial financial investment. And in the first conversation we had, the individual asked me, "Are you willing to commit to yourself, your life, and your livelihood? And are you willing to expend this amount of money on you?" And it was such an interesting way that the question was asked of me, because I thought, how many times have I taken money and put it here and put it here and put resources here and spent my time doing this and doing that when it did not really benefit me? And am I willing to make that commitment? And I was. I absolutely was. And I went through this program and this process, and I found it very beneficial, very enlightening, very supportive of me and my purpose in life and how I show up. You see, our lives are like the layers of an onion. We've heard this before. We're constantly peeling away the layers. We never get to that place where we've reached perfection. We've never come to that place where we have arrived. We are constantly striving and arriving. There's always more. that you can look at. There's always more that you can peel away, but we have to make the commitment. Ernest Holmes says this: destroy the thought that would place limitation or bondage upon any situation or condition. That's a pretty powerful statement from Holmes. Destroy the thought that would place limitation or bondage. Refuse to allow that to come into your mind, to be part of your psyche, to be part of your reality. And what you can know from this is, as you do that, your vision for your life will unfold organically. It will open up in some of the simplest ways. Now, there may be some challenges. When I went to school years ago, I had to learn how to write theme papers. Wasn't the worst thing I had to do, but it was something to learn that was different. But it came to me, and then it became a habit, and then it became easy, and then it just became a part of my life as a student. So it's a little uncomfortable at first. It feels a little unnatural at first, but once we get into the groove, and once we get into the knowing and the behavior, and we continue to practice, it becomes easy. So I encourage you, take time to be curious. Ask more questions than anyone ever thought you should. Feed that inner interest and desire within you. Feed that inquisitive being within you and allow it to grow and evolve. Allow the time and the space for your personal process, for your growth, for your journey. Release the things that get in the way or that have gotten in the way. Let them go. Bless them as you release them. Whether they are people, places, or things. Whether they are behaviors, thoughts, and beliefs. Release them and let them go. Take time to open your arms wide and allow yourself to embrace all that there is available for you. And then make a commitment to yourself. Commit to being the best that you can be. Commit to being and having what you choose. Commit to your personal transformation. Move away from your comfort zone. Allow yourself to take a risk, just a little one, every day. You don't have to go find anything. It's all available here now. We just need to allow it to come forth for us. The vision of you, the vision of your life, is already complete in universal mind. If we can stop fighting it, if we can stop resisting it, if we can commit to it, we can attain it with grace, with ease. And as we do this, we are changing our thinking. And as we change our thinking, as Ernest Holmes once said, we're changing our lives. We're changing our reality. I remind you this week to know that you are worthy of the commitment that you can make to yourself. You can commit to the transformation, whether it seems small or minor or it's huge and monumental. Make that commitment to self and know that you deserve all the good that is coming forth. Please pray with me. As we bring this time together to a close and we bring this month together to a close, we turn our attention to the very concept of what we have brought forth here, that limitless possibility that lives and exists in the mind of God for each and every one of us. And what we know is we know that we have access to creative power, creative source, and creative resources, and we can choose and be and have whatever we want because God is right here, right now, holding us in that space, lifting us up, allowing us, inviting us to become all that we can be. And so I know this is blessed, and I know it's perfect, and I know it's good, and I know that each one of us is connected one to another and one to source, and in this place, in this space, we can encourage one another to become, to be, to live, to love, to express and experience life graciously and gratefully. And so I give thanks. I give thanks for these words. I give thanks for this inspiration. I give thanks for the very idea of who we are and how we show up. And as we move forward this week and we move forward throughout our lives, we take the time to be conscientious of who we are, what we are, and how we interact with one another, and how we embrace others in our hearts, and how we demonstrate compassion, love, and respect, and how we contribute to this world being a better world, a greater world for all of us, all of mankind, all of humankind, all people everywhere. I know this is blessed and perfect, and I give great thanks for the opportunity to connect in consciousness anytime we choose, knowing that Spirit is always here, always present. And so we just let this go. We let this go and we let this be, turning it over to Divine Mind, knowing that Spirit always, always says yes. And I call it good and perfect. And I simply ground it by saying, and so it is.
Now is the season, now I begin. I see no reason for waiting. No need to hope for my ship to come in. I set my intention and start right now. Now is the season, now I begin. I see no reason